and welcome to Mediation Works. This is another segment in our series on disputes involving family matters. And I'm Wendy Lakusta. I'm here with my colleague Sharon Sutherland. And today our special guest is Matt Ostrow. And Matt is a family lawyer who specializes in LGBT and Q, I guess.
Yeah.
Issues. And so what we'd like to start off with, Matt, if you're okay with that, is talking a little bit about your practice and how you came into working in this specialization.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. When I became a family lawyer, decided to practice in family law. First of all, I was drawn to the human element involved, and what I noticed is that there weren't a lot of LGBT lawyers in the area that practiced in family law.
Right.
And so I decided that I'd put myself out there as someone who could connect with this community and provide family legal services to them.
And that's kind of interesting. So was that, it was a community and you were feeling like the community might have any kind of special needs, or is it just a connection and a feeling of connection with the person that they were dealing with when they were in conflict?
Yes, I think it's exactly that. I found that when you're going through a separation or a divorce, it's one of those most emotional times, and you should be able to connect with your counsel. And if you do have counsel who is LGBT, can understand some of the nuances of your relationship, you can go through the whole process feeling a little bit easier. And so that's basically the reason why I thought that putting myself out there as an out lawyer, LGBT lawyer, who would be able to cater to that community, provide that support to people at their most vulnerable time.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess Wendy and I were talking when you were coming in, Matt, about just the degree to which that might make a difference in terms of mediators. Because, I mean, obviously we're coming from the place of being mediators. And really curious, is that something that you take into account in choosing somebody? And I'm thinking mediators or any other professionals that you might engage with a family?
Absolutely. I think it's incumbent on family counsel to really analyze the family dynamic and choose a mediator that is the right fit. Now, I should say, first of all, in some cases, mediation might not be the right fit. It might be the type of case that has to proceed through the courts, which has a whole other set of factors that someone has to consider. Right. But yes, when it seems as though mediation is going to be the right fit for the family, then yes, there are certain things that I take into consideration when I'm selecting a mediator for a specific family.
Okay, what would some of those considerations look like, do you think?
I would want to look for mediators who have some experience dealing with same-sex relationships. I think it's important to find mediators who are open-minded to different family dynamics and family types. For example, I think that in advance of the mediation dealing with a same-sex couple, there's certain topics that you want to make sure that the mediator is aware of ahead of time. And some of those might be that, unlike opposite-sex mediation, issues around who the children are going to spend with on Mother's Day or Father's Day are actually quite controversial. And you want to alert the mediator ahead of time, or have a mediator who is sensitive and willing to work through an issue like that, which doesn't really come up much in other mediations. So that's one thing that I would want to make sure the mediator is alive to, knows in advance. Also, in a same-sex mediation, often there may be, with regards to children, there might be other players, if you will, other parents even, who are on the birth certificate. Right. And so you actually get a completely different dynamic, in the sense that sometimes there may be two people at the table, but you also have to take in consideration other biological parents or other people who stand in the role of a parent, and who have actually legal rights in some cases to have access or parenting time with the children. And so you want to choose a mediator who is also alive to that issue, because that again does not necessarily come up in opposite sex mediations as much. So those are some of the examples I look for mediators who are open, who can think a little bit outside the box, if you will, from a traditional relationship, and who are willing to work with a non-traditional family.
And open to hearing what their issues are.
Absolutely.
Because that's the starting place.
Yeah.
As a mediator, is sitting down and asking people,
Sure.
and being open to hearing those and not have judgments or biases about it.
Yeah, and a good example of that is one of the topics that often comes up in mediations with same-sex couples is when the children become of an age and they start asking questions about, why do I have two daddies, or why do I have two mommies? Those are very sensitive issues that again don't necessarily come up in traditional mediations, and having the mediator actually work with the families to develop a script. A script that will read to the children when they become of an age. And so it's a whole different element of a mediation that you don't see anywhere else. And it's certainly not something that you would see in the court process. I mean, a judge would not, the role of the judge would not be to sit down and write out a script to read to the children so everyone's on the same page. So that is something that, the mediator I would want to, would feel comfortable doing something like that.
A bit more of a coaching element.
Absolutely, working with the families. Okay, so when Johnny is 7 years old and starts asking these questions, we're all on the same page.
Right. Yeah. A lot more of that long-term planning, really, for the whole duration of the time after the separation.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I guess that's one of the advantages of any kind of collaborative divorce process in any event, whether it's mediation, whether it's something else, is that opportunity to sit down and work through all of those kinds of topics. So it's helpful that you're kind of identifying some of those that might look a little different. Right. And I know we were talking earlier before you came in that there are definitely these series of issues that might come up in same-sex couples. Other ones that might come up that you were talking about when you were dealing with somebody, a trans individual in different types of family settings.
Right. Yes, I mean, a mediation involving a trans, where one of the parents is transitioning, definitely requires a little bit more forethought, I think, on the family lawyer to choose a mediator. First of all, it's not common. It's not a common situation we're seeing, but it may become more prevalent. But I think the factors there is you do want to choose someone who does have some form of experience in dealing with gender creative individuals, and someone who has maybe previous experience in doing same-sex mediations may be able to carry over some of their knowledge into that type of mediation. Some of the things that I think make that different is you have to be alive. One issue I know we've talked about is pronoun usage. Right. Yeah. And that's entirely, it's very, very important actually to have a mediation where that is addressed with the mediator in advance, so we all know what is the preferred pronouns that are going to be used around the table. Sure. So that's
and those could be different in different families.
Sure.
Different people. Right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's also important that the correct pronouns are used out of respect, and that can actually scuttle the mediation very early on if that's not addressed and the mediator isn't alive to that issue. Right. Building on some other issues with respect to a mediation involving one of the parents is transitioning is again Mother's Day, Father's Day. Right. Those become very, very important, sensitive issues to discuss, because they can cause a lot of disagreement between the parties. And so having a mediator who can tread very, very carefully in that area is important to find. And again, a mediator who's willing to sort of step outside the box a little bit and work with the families in developing scripts, in developing things to tell children, because inevitably there's going to be those questions. And so working with the families, dealing with if there's property division, sure. Dealing if there's parenting time issues, sure.
Yeah.
But also addressing something like, well, what happens when who's going to be mom, who's going to be mama, who's going to be dad, who's going to be papa, are very, very important, and you want to find a mediator who's alive to that, who's attuned to that, and is willing to use their skills to help the parties work through what would seem to us a very benign issue, but well, maybe not. But in most mediations, that's not. That's you don't spend hours on that issue, but you can.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that happens too, just in legal practice, anywhere throughout, no matter who it is you're working with, whether it's another lawyer across the table, there's just a lot of these kinds of things that just need to be discussed ahead of time.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's why I often contact the mediators in advance, and I say this is the family dynamic, without going into too many details, just in case we don't decide to go that route. Calling the mediator up in advance and saying, hey, this is the family dynamic. Is this something that you would be comfortable taking on? And what's your availability for something like this? Because they are mediations that often take longer than your standard mediation.
Yeah, well, that sounds great. Well, we're running out of time, Matt, but I just so much appreciate you coming here. It sounds like these issues have come a long way, our understanding, and like you said, being alive to it. I love that term. And it sounds like we've still got a long way to go. We do, but I think that the law is moving in a really great direction in terms of family law, and in terms of for trans people and for same-sex couples, and I'm really, really excited about the future.
Well, thank you so much.
No, thank you.